Have you ever noticed how there's a certain unease and a need to be cautious around women in your office? Do you ever feel that women tend to take advantage of this and think they can flirt around in the office and then escalate it up to HR if there's even the slightest inconvenience, or the attractive guy who was supposed to flirt back didn't and the ugly one did? In reality, men are avoiding women at work simply because they are worried about women making unfounded charges or threats. In this video, I'll briefly talk about an article I read about how males are starting to snub women at work in increasing numbers, which is making women feel uneasy. The author expresses her opinion that men are misinterpreting the Me Too movement and going too far in their attempts to avoid women. She claims that the Me Too movement has given women the impression that males are punishing them. The author of the piece begins by discussing a recent American study that demonstrates how males seem to be following prominent career politicians and figures. It says that many prominent politicians are known to not have dinner alone with any woman who wasn't their partner. It says that it's working wonders for one such politician, and that there was quite the trendsetter when he was still in office. And right now, it seems like working guys all over corporate America are following him, inspired by his foolproof and cautious way of being around women in the workplace. Here's the truth: men are afraid they're going to get fired. Another study that was conducted to evaluate the effects and consequences of the Me Too movement found that men are becoming noticeably less willing to approach their female peers in the workplace. According to the report, 20% of men avoid speaking to and interacting with female coworkers privately. A third or more of men stated they would be terrified to be alone with a woman in the study's primary research, which questioned men how they would feel if they were in the office alone with a woman. Why? Well, the main reason is that they just don't want to be in a situation where they're framed for any sort of allegations against them by the women. They don't want to lose their jobs over some women. And it's pretty easy for women to have a man fired from his job these days. It's just one email, call, or conversation away from and with HR. Here's another truth: men will always be guilty in the eyes of corporate authority. Nowadays, until you can prove your innocence, you are guilty. Men are most afraid of this. God forbid, if a woman even alleges untruly that a guy harassed her at work, that man will lose his job, any chance of getting another employment in the future, along with his reputation and self-esteem. That is the enormous advantage that women have over men at work. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that 21% of men said they would be reluctant to hire a woman for a job that needs an intimate connection, like traveling for business. 19% of the males responded that they would be reluctant to hire a woman who was deemed attractive by social norms. This was the result of a survey taken from employees working in a variety of businesses. The survey also noted that similar surveys taken in the past did not garner similar results. In the previous surveys, men were more comfortable interacting with women in office settings. Previously, 15% of men compared to 21% in the later surveys indicated they would be less likely to recruit women for positions that demand close interpersonal interactions. The reality is that men would rather work more freely with other men. This only serves to demonstrate how increasingly wary males have become of women throughout time, especially in the last 10 years, and how much they would prefer to communicate and work with other guys. In cubicles, meetings, and boardrooms, they prefer to work with other males rather than women because they can share information, talk about ideas, and organize their schedules together. This is due to their fear of losing the career they'd have worked so hard to build over a long period of time. They may lose everything with just one unfounded accusation. In a society that primarily takes into account and believes what women say, one false charge could end up being the villain. So, don't blame men, I mean. Men can see what has happened over the years, especially with the advent of the Me Too movement. They don't want to bear responsibility for something they did not commit. They don't want to lose their jobs, status, and position in society. Just to be clear, men not saying that they are the only ones that are terrified of women here. Women also seem to be hiring fewer women in general. According to the results of the preceding poll, more than 10% of men and women were projected to be less likely than before to hire attractive women. I feel this is the case because, in general, people tend to believe attractive people more than those who lack beauty. We can credit popular culture for that. The truth is that the typical attractive modern woman odd today is out of reach anyway. In every movie you see, regardless of how recent or how old it is, the lead character is either the most attractive woman or the most attractive man who is incapable of wrongdoing and who works to uphold justice in society. The evil men and villains are always aged, gorgeous, scared people who look awful. It should therefore come as no surprise that neither men nor women would want to consider hiring attractive women, because if a woman made a false complaint against a man, everyone would assume that she was telling the truth. Everyone can see a guy trying to flirt with a beautiful woman since, after all, that is how it has always been. Guys find it extremely challenging to deal with the harassment issue. Some people may be accused of harassment for merely making jokes with a coworker. Even in this instance, two male coworkers could legitimately be making jokes among themselves without targeting anyone, and they could be condemned for it as harassment. Then, all of a sudden, HR is after them and interrogating them about everything. Men are wary of shaking hands with women out of concern that she could view it as harassment. Avoiding touch altogether would be easier. People's perceptions of acceptable and inappropriate workplace interactions are distorted. The study's thorough debunking of the notion that men lack a clear sense of what constitutes unacceptable behavior, however, is what makes it so intriguing. The first step taken by the researchers was to examine 19 acts and determine whether or not to categorize them as harassment. Sending explicit emails to subordinates is an example of this. Both genders largely agree on what harassment entails, and the majority of men and women, respectively, are aware of what it is. One of the authors of the study told the Harvard Business Review that it is mostly inaccurate to suggest that men don't realize their behavior is inappropriate, and that women are making a mountain out of a molehill. If anything, women define harassment more broadly than do males. Most males are able to distinguish between a lovely hug and a wicked one. They are fully aware of what is considered harassment. On the other hand, from the perspective of a woman, anything is harassment. If a line manager asks a subordinate or junior team member to stay late at the office for an hour, she can create a scenario in which she is seen with the manager in the CCTV cameras as he speaks to her and gives her instructions on how to approach a specific project, and she can then essentially fabricate a story about how he was trying to harass her. And you know what? HR would believe the woman. It makes sense that males would want to avoid being alone with women in order to avoid any potential problems that could endanger their entire careers. And because they feel left out, women have started to protest about this. They are no longer expected to work harder on projects and finish them in the wee hours of the morning at the office. Because they know their professions won't be in jeopardy, people would prefer to ask men to stay late and work with them. The reality is that men just don't want gossip and overreactions from women. Women are also left out of the team's private and confidential meetings when important information is exchanged. For instance, if I had to share anything with a coworker in a cramped conference room alone, and I had to go with someone, I'd prefer to pick a man, since I understand that inviting a woman into a confined space might seem odd to others. The negative effects of Me Too are still being felt in the corporate sector, not just in America, but also in Europe, England, and other parts of the world. Men will continue to avoid working with women as long as they continue to overreact to the movement and level false charges against them that we constantly see in the media. There's no place for gossip and drama at the office, and unfortunately, that's what most women bring to it. Thanks for watching Man Reacts. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. What do guys think? Let us know in the comments.